They told you to be polite, to smile, nod, say please, and thank you. They told you that manners would open doors, that kindness would keep you safe. But here's the truth. No one dares to admit politeness when automatic is not kindness. It's submission. And in the real world, the world of power manipulation and quiet dominance, being polite at the wrong time is the fastest way to be disrespected, discarded, and used. Because the people who exploit you aren't loud. They're not screaming at you. They're testing you subtly, silently. They push a little step a little too close, speak over you in conversation, offer apologies laced with control. And when you respond with a smile, when you laugh nervously, when you say no worries or it's okay, they've seen it, you're not going to fight. You're going to fold. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that power doesn't go to the loud or the violent, it goes to the calm, strategic, and coldly aware. So here's your wake-up call. When you're polite by default, you're not being noble. You're being handled. And the moment you realize that, everything changes. Politeness has always been sold to us as a moral virtue. From childhood, we're trained to say, "Excuse me," to let others speak first, to smile, even when we're uncomfortable. Society carved it into our bones, not as a tool, but as an identity. But what no one taught you is that in the wrong hands, politeness becomes a weapon, not against others, but against yourself. Why? Because when used unconsciously, politeness signals something far deeper than good manners. It tells others that you're more afraid of conflict than you are of disrespect, that you'd rather be agreeable than assertive. And in the psychological ecosystem of real-world power that makes you prey. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He didn't reject politeness, he studied it. He knew it had value when used with precision. But he also knew that manners become dangerous when they're misapplied, when they're used to appease wolves in the skin of sheep. He saw how those in power exploit your desire to be liked, using it to make you smaller, softer, and easier to manage. In a room full of predators, the man who smiles too easily becomes the first one tested. Psychologists today echo this in different terms. People subconsciously test boundaries to identify who's in control. It's not always conscious or malicious, but it's real. When someone invades your space, speaks over you, offers a fake apology, or wastes your time without apology, they're collecting data. And when your response is overly polite, when you laugh it off or say, "It's okay," you send back the worst possible signal you can continue. What's worse is that most people don't realize this dynamic is happening until the damage is done. They confuse silence with virtue. They mistake self-erasure for emotional intelligence. They call it being the bigger person, not realizing they're becoming invisible in the process. But power, real power, comes not from being loud, but from being clear. Not from being aggressive, but from knowing when to go cold. And that's where Machiavellian insight cuts through the fog. Never confuse courtesy with weakness. And never extend kindness where silence would have earned respect. The truth is, politeness is not a problem until it becomes a habit. When you can't turn it off, it's no longer a gesture of grace, it's a leash. And predators can smell it. This isn't about becoming rude or cruel. It's about seeing the world without illusion, understanding that not everyone deserves your warmth, your energy, or your... Because once you reclaim your politeness as a choice rather than a reflex, you stop being predictable and start becoming powerful. That's the difference between being liked and being respected. And Machiavelli would always choose the latter. When someone crosses a boundary, you never gave them permission to test. They lean in too close. They make an offhand joke that hits just a little too personal. They interrupt you mid-sentence and look at you like you're the one being rude. And what do most people do? They smile nervously. They say, "No worries," or worse, laugh it off to keep the peace. But here's the truth. They're not being playful. They're measuring you, testing your threshold, seeing how much room you'll give away before you push back. Machiavelli's correction: no reaction, cold eye contact, a firm, "Don't do that again," or even better, say nothing. Let silence cut deeper than words. Walk away if you must. Because silence in moments like this signals something powerful. I'm not the one. When someone gives a manipulative apology, they hurt you. then quickly say, "I'm sorry," with a hollow tone and expect instant forgiveness. They're not apologizing out of remorse. They're resetting the board to regain control. Most people conditioned to be polite say, "It's okay," even when it's not. But here's the danger when you accept an insincere apology. You teach them they can cross the line anytime as long as they say the right words afterward. Machiavelli's move. Pause. Let the apology land and go nowhere. Say, "I heard you." Say, "Thanks for saying that and nothing else." You're not cold. You're sovereign. You decide when trust is earned. When someone plays the professional victim, they're always wronged, always overlooked. Every conversation is a new tale of betrayal. And when you respond with excessive sympathy, nodding and validating without question, you become their emotional servant. Machiavelli would recognize this as emotional parasitism. He wouldn't engage the cycle, he'd break it. He'd say, "You always seem to be in the same pattern. Have you taken any responsibility?" or simply shift the subject entirely. Disruption is power, because they can't loop someone who refuses to play the role. When someone wastes your time deliberately, they delay. They talk in circles. They cancel last-minute reschedule 3 times. This isn't disorganization, it's control. And what do polite people do? No problem, take your time. But Machiavelli would see this for what it is, a test of tolerance. And he'd fail it intentionally. Say, "Let me know when this becomes a priority for you," then walk. When your time becomes non-negotiable, so does your power. When someone uses passive dominance, sarcasm, silence, subtle mockery, they don't attack directly. They chip away with tone, with timing, with unspoken superiority. Most people stay calm, polite, try to be the bigger person. But silence here is not strength, it's surrender. Machiavelli's response, interrupt. Let's stay focused. Or if you have something to say it directly. Cold tone, no smile. That's not rudeness, that's control. This is where everything changes. You've been taught your entire life that politeness is a moral default. That if you're kind, agreeable, soft-spoken, people will like you, and if they like you, they'll treat you well. But that belief is not only outdated, it's dangerous. Because in a world that runs on power, preference, politeness isn't always virtue. Sometimes it's submission in disguise. Most people don't choose to be polite. They're polite because they're afraid of what happens if they're not. Afraid of tension, afraid of rejection, afraid of seeming rude. So they smile when they should speak. They say it's okay when it's not. They explain themselves to people who haven't earned the right to ask. But this isn't decency. It's performance, and deep down it feels like self-betrayal. Machiavelli saw this clearly. When you're always polite, you stop being respected and start being rehearsed. People don't respond to your truth. They react to your compliance. And soon you're not a person anymore. You're a convenience, a predictable presence who never disrupts the room. But here's the psychological pivot. Coldness isn't cruelty, it's clarity. When you go quiet instead of apologizing, when you remove your warmth instead of your boundaries, you're not hurting people. You're training them. You're signaling something subtle but unforgettable. Access to me is not unconditional. There is power in stillness. There is fear in unpredictability. The man who is always nice is easy to decode. But the one who smiles by choice, who can go warm or cold depending on context, that man becomes a force. Because he's not driven by impulse approval or insecurity. He's governed by strategy. And that's what separates presence from performance. Politeness as strategy is powerful. It becomes a gesture of intent, not a reaction to fear. You can say thank you with depth, not desperation. You can say I understand without folding. You can say nothing and still dominate the entire room. Because when your energy shifts, people feel it more than they hear it. And silence, real calculated silence, commands more attention than explanation ever could. So here's the brutal truth. If your politeness isn't optional, it isn't honorable, it's exploitable. It's not peacekeeping, it's permission. It's not virtue, it's a script others will use to rewrite your place in their story. Machiavelli would never advise you to be cruel, but he would demand that you know when to stop performing softness and start embodying self-respect. Because power doesn't require noise, only presence. And the moment you learn to go cold without guilt to withdraw kindness when it's no longer earned, you'll stop being manipulated and start being remembered. In a world obsessed with being liked, the one who can choose to be polite and just as easily choose silence becomes a rare, respected, and dangerous presence. This isn't just philosophy. It's a weapon, but only if you install it correctly. First, you must redefine what politeness is. It is not your personality. It is not your identity. It is a strategic tool, like silence, like a firm no, like walking away. If you've been using it as a reflex, it's time to rewire that reflex. Because a man who is polite by default is not respected, he's controlled. A man who is polite by choice is something else entirely dangerous. So how do you reprogram your behavior? Start by building a visible switch between warmth and unreadable presence. People should feel the shift when a line is crossed. Not a dramatic outburst, not emotional reactivity, just a sudden stillness, a change in tone, the eye contact that no longer smiles, the voice that no longer softens. Your words may be few or non-existent, but your presence should become undeniable. When someone violates your space, wastes your time, or tries to manipulate your emotions, you don't react, you switch. And in that switch, power is transferred. Second, delete unnecessary apologies. Stop saying sorry when someone else is late. Stop saying sorry for having boundaries. Stop apologizing for simply speaking your truth. In modern life, apology has become emotional currency, and you're spending it on people who haven't earned it. Replace "Sorry I can't" with "That doesn't work for me." Replace sorry for the delay with "Here's the update." Replace sorry I was blunt with silence. You don't need to cushion your truth to make it easier for others to digest. The moment you stop apologizing for your clarity, people start respecting your words. Next, learn to embrace tension and stop diffusing it. Most people use politeness to escape discomfort. They laugh off passive insults. They nod along when they're being subtly disrespected. But every time you diffuse the moment, you're giving away your authority. Tension is not your enemy, it's your training ground. Let it breathe. Let it burn. Hold eye contact. Say less. Make others uncomfortable, not out of cruelty, but out of command. When you stop rushing to make people feel safe, you become someone they don't want to test. Finally, make politeness unsettling. Let it be sharp, measured, controlled. People should notice when you say thank you. It should mean something, because it could have just as easily been, "Don't speak to me that way." When politeness becomes rare, it becomes valuable. And when you use it with precision, it becomes a signal you're dealing with someone who chooses everything, especially their tone. This is the shift Machiavelli would have demanded. Not to become cold by nature, but cold by control. Not to reject kindness, but to weaponize it. From now on, let your politeness be a message, not a habit. And that message is clear: I can be warm, but only if you've earned it. These aren't just rules, they're recalibrations of your identity. They mark the line between being polite and being powerful, between living to please and living to command. Etch them into your mindset like ritual, because when everything else fails, these will hold the frame. Commandment 1. Politeness is earned, not owed. You don't owe please or thank you to people who violate your space, waste your time, or disrespect your boundaries. These words, when given without intention, become meaningless. But when you offer them sparingly with clarity and precision, they regain weight. Let others learn that your kindness is not a default setting. It's a reward, a signal, something they have to earn. If everyone gets your grace, it has no value. Commandment 2. Silence is stronger than soft words. Most people are addicted to explaining, apologizing, justifying, but power lives in the man who knows when to say nothing. Silence is a weapon that rattles the insecure and disorients the manipulator. When tension rises, speak less. Let your stillness become pressure. Let your eye contact replace paragraphs. The one who controls the silence controls the room. Commandment 3. Withdraw access, not escalate conflict. You don't need to argue. You don't need to defend your name in every room. When someone crosses the line, simply remove yourself, not with drama, but with indifference. Absence is a scalpel that cuts deeper than confrontation. It's how you remind them access to me is a privilege, not a guarantee. Nothing reclaims your power faster than walking away without looking back. Commandment 4. Respect yourself more than their comfort. You were taught to avoid conflict at all costs, even if it meant self-betrayal. You laughed when you were uncomfortable. You smiled when you were insulted. You nodded when you should have said no. But that version of you ends here. From now on, your self-respect is non-negotiable. If they feel discomfort when you speak the truth, so be it. Their peace is not more valuable than your dignity. Commandment 5. Politeness without power becomes performance. When you use politeness to avoid being disliked, you become a character, not a presence. You become predictable, safe, and forgettable. But when you're powerful first and polite second, people pay attention. Your words carry gravity. Your tone carries edge. Because they know you didn't have to be kind, you chose to be. That makes all the difference. These 5 commandments are your armor in a world that feeds on passivity. They aren't about becoming cruel, they're about becoming intentional, about transforming every gesture, every word, every silence into a controlled act of presence. Remember, it's not that you stop being polite. It's that you stop being polite by habit and start being polite by design. That's when they stop testing you and start respecting you. You weren't born to be agreeable. You weren't built to be palatable, soft, and easy to digest. That's not why you're here. You're here to take up space fully, unapologetically, and with intention. You're here not to adjust to the world, but to make the world adjust to your presence. And yet somewhere along the line, you were trained to shrink, to smile through tension, to laugh off disrespect, to perform politeness even when it cost you your dignity. But now, you know the truth. And once you know it, you can't unsee it. Politeness, when it's automatic, becomes self-erasure. It tells people you fear discomfort more than you value self-respect. It tells them you'll trade your voice for a bit of social approval, that you'll keep the peace even if it means setting fire to your boundaries. But peace built on fear is not peace. It's quiet desperation, and no one respects desperation. So here's what must become your new baseline. If they mistake your politeness for weakness, punish them with absence, not out of spite, not for revenge, but to send the clearest message possible: access to me is earned, not assumed. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to explain, argue, or plead. You just need to go still, go silent. Let the tension breathe. Let them sit in the discomfort of having misread you. In that moment, you reclaim what politeness had been costing you: your edge, your weight, your power. This is the shift, the transformation. You stop being the nice one and start becoming the rare one, the one who knows when to smile, when to go quiet, and when to walk away. You become someone who doesn't need to be cold to be feared or loud to be heard. You become undeniable. Because in the end, it's not about being cruel, it's about being clear. It's not about being feared, it's about being felt. And the man who can control his warmth, who can offer or withhold it with precision, becomes unforgettable. Not because he's easy, but because he's impossible to predict. So ask yourself the next time you feel the urge to be polite, am I doing this out of strength or fear? Am I being kind or being controlled? And if the answer reveals weakness, drop it. If it reveals a habit, break it, because the world doesn't need another agreeable face. It needs presence. It needs posture. It needs you to stop explaining and start existing. Remember this: a man who controls his politeness controls how the world treats him, and a man who withdraws it at the right moment controls everything. In a world that constantly pressures you to be agreeable, the real power lies in knowing when not to be. This video delivers one of the most important truths: politeness isn't always kindness. It can be self-betrayal. When you say it's okay when it's not, when you smile to avoid conflict, when you apologize just to keep the peace, you're not showing strength, you're giving away your authority. The lesson here is sharp, but liberating politeness must be a choice, not a reflex. You don't owe access, warmth, or explanation to people who test your boundaries. In fact, the moment you learn to go silent, to remove yourself, to withhold your energy from those who haven't earned it, that's the moment people start respecting you, not just liking you. Use this mindset in daily life, at work, in relationships with strangers. Hold your frame, speak less, let your presence do the heavy lifting. And remember, clarity is not cruelty. It's how you teach the world how to treat you. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to be respected by the right ones.